The Galactic Empire stretched across the stars, its vastness swallowing up entire solar systems and bending planets to its will. The Empire's ships, sleek, colossal, and terrifying, patrolled every corner of the galaxy. No one dared challenge them, for to do so meant certain obliteration. For centuries, the Empire dominated through sheer technological superiority, and they had grown accustomed to their place at the top. It was inconceivable that anyone, especially a species from a backwater planet like Earth, could ever pose a real threat. Earth had long been the object of the Empire's mockery. Known for its relatively primitive technology, it was seen as a curiosity at best and a minor annoyance at worst. The Empire tolerated Earth's existence, much like how one might ignore a gnat. They'd visited once, many decades ago, and after a quick assessment, determined that Earth's development was centuries behind the rest of the galaxy. Their ships were old-fashioned, their weapons outdated, and their innovations unimpressive. Earth was no more than a flea in the Empire's grand vision of the galaxy. The Empire's complacency ran deep, rooted in arrogance and a belief in their invincibility. But what the Empire didn't know, what they couldn't have fathomed, was that Earth had been quietly working. While the Empire's gaze was fixed on greater threats and larger systems, Earth had been biding its time. Technological leaps had been made in secret, far from the prying eyes of Imperial spies and scouts. Engineers, scientists, and military leaders had worked tirelessly, developing new kinds of ships, new weapons, things the Empire couldn't have imagined. But the Empire continued to laugh. At galactic forums, Earth's representatives were met with derision. Prototypes, they sneered, referring to Earth's latest ships. Antiques, more like? Even when rumors began to circulate about Earth's supposed advancements, the Empire's response was nothing more than a shrug. After all, what could humans possibly create that would challenge the might of the Empire? They'd seen Earth's ships, lumbering, inefficient vessels from the last century. To the Empire, nothing about humanity had changed. Still, whispers grew. Some alien species, having quietly observed Earth from afar, began to suspect that the humans might not be as primitive as the Empire believed. Some saw potential in Earth's relentless spirit, and their refusal to be crushed under the weight of galactic scorn. But the Empire remained blind, their arrogance unshaken. In hidden research facilities scattered across Earth and its colonies, however, something incredible had been born. A new ship, something completely unlike the Empire's grandiose, bloated war machines. It was sleeker, faster, more agile. It utilized technologies the Empire hadn't even begun to explore: plasma drives, quantum shift capabilities, and an energy source that could power weapons capable of tearing through the fabric of space itself. Its name was the Vanguard. The humans knew they couldn't broadcast their achievements. That would only draw the Empire's attention too soon. No, this ship had to be tested, carefully, quietly, and far from the heart of the Empire. The plan was simple. The Vanguard would patrol the outskirts of Imperial space, appearing as nothing more than another routine scouting ship. But those aboard the Vanguard knew better. They knew they were bait. The Empire, ever hungry for control, wouldn't allow a human ship to patrol their territory without consequence. They would send a response, likely a small fleet, enough to remind the humans of their place. And that's exactly what Earth was counting on. They needed the Empire to see the Vanguard up close. They needed to show them what Earth had become. It didn't take long for the Empire to respond. When the Vanguard entered the Empire's outer sectors, a message was sent. Imperial Command had dispatched a small patrol fleet to intercept the human ship. It was a routine response. The Empire saw no need to send a larger force for such an insignificant threat. 3 ships would suffice, they thought. Enough to send the humans scurrying back to their little blue planet. The humans aboard the Vanguard received the transmission without a word. They knew what was coming, and they were ready. The Vanguard slipped through the darkness of space with an eerie grace, its engines barely registering to the sensors of those who tried to track it. It was a marvel of human ingenuity, but no one outside of Earth knew its true potential. From the outside, it seemed like just another ship, modest in size and lacking the imposing presence of the Galactic Empire's behemoth war vessels. And that was exactly how Earth wanted it. Inside the ship, the crew operated with a quiet confidence. They were not there for glory or recognition. They were there to prove something, not to the Empire, but to themselves. Years of being mocked and underestimated had led to this moment, and now, it was time to show the galaxy what Earth was truly capable of. The captain, a seasoned officer with no name that needed to be known, stood at the helm. Every command was precise, calculated. There was no room for error. They had rehearsed this moment countless times. The ship's systems hummed, their diagnostics showing optimal performance. The experimental weapons were primed, the shields at full strength. Everything was ready. They knew they were being watched. The Empire's small fleet arrived in what seemed like an exaggerated display of arrogance. 3 Imperial ships, all larger than the Vanguard, dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons primed and aimed at the human vessel. The Empire was taking no chances, at least, that's what they told themselves. In reality, they still believed this was little more than a routine exercise, a chance to remind the humans of their inferiority. A communication signal came through. The Imperial commander's voice was laced with contempt. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Imperial space. Surrender or be destroyed." The crew of the Vanguard exchanged glances, but no one spoke. There was nothing to say. The captain, without acknowledging the transmission, simply nodded to the weapons officer. The Empire had made their move, and now it was time for Earth to make theirs. The Vanguard's engines roared to life as the ship accelerated towards the Imperial fleet, closing the gap in seconds. The Imperial ships, caught off guard by the sudden burst of speed, scrambled to react. They opened fire, their plasma cannons lighting up the void. But the Vanguard was faster. It twisted and rolled, evading the barrage with an almost unnatural precision. The humans had spent years perfecting their ship's agility, knowing that brute force would never be enough against the Empire's overwhelming firepower. The first volley from the Vanguard was a single shot, carefully calculated and devastating in its impact. The energy blast, fueled by the ship's new reactor, tore through the shields of the lead Imperial cruiser as though they were made of paper. The Imperial crew barely had time to register what had happened before their ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, scattering debris into space. The remaining 2 ships faltered, their crews in a state of disbelief. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The humans were supposed to be inferior, their ships nothing more than relics. But now, one of the Empire's finest vessels had been obliterated in a single shot. Panic began to set in. The Imperial commander barked orders, demanding a counterattack. The remaining ships opened fire again, but the Vanguard was already on the move, darting between the shots with a speed and agility that no Imperial ship could match. It was as though the human vessel knew where the shots would land before they were even fired. Another shot from the Vanguard. Another Imperial ship destroyed. The last remaining ship attempted to flee, its engines flaring as it desperately tried to escape. But there would be no escape. The Vanguard closed in, cutting off the Imperial vessel's retreat. The humans didn't even need to fire. The last ship surrendered without a fight, the crew too terrified to resist. They had never seen anything like this before. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Vanguard had done what no one thought possible. It had defeated an Imperial fleet, not through sheer numbers or overwhelming force, but through precision, strategy, and a technology that the Empire couldn't begin to understand. The battle was over almost as quickly as it had begun, but the implications would ripple through the galaxy for years to come. The Galactic Empire had been challenged, and for the first time in centuries, they had lost. And the ones who had delivered that loss were the very same humans they had mocked and dismissed. But for the crew of the Vanguard, this was only the beginning. They knew the Empire wouldn't take this defeat lightly. Retaliation would come, and it would come swiftly. But for now, they had proven that Earth was no longer a planet to be overlooked. As the Vanguard turned and made its way back to Earth, the crew remained silent, their minds already preparing for the next battle. They had sent a message today, not just to the Empire, but to the entire galaxy. Earth was ready. The Empire's remaining ship drifted in stunned silence, surrounded by the wreckage of its fallen comrades. The crew, once full of bravado and arrogance, now trembled with disbelief. How could this have happened? A single human vessel had destroyed 2 of their finest ships in mere minutes, and it hadn't even broken a sweat. The surviving commander stared at his controls, unable to comprehend the data flashing across his screen. The energy readings from the human ship were off the charts, unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. This wasn't just advanced, it was something else entirely. Something new. For the humans, there was no room for celebration. They remained focused, knowing the battle wasn't truly over. The Empire would learn from this, and the next time they faced Earth, it would be with more than just a small fleet. But that didn't matter right now. What mattered was that they had proved themselves. The Vanguard had done what no one thought possible, and the galaxy would take notice. The humans moved swiftly. The crew worked in seamless coordination, executing their next move with precision. There was no boasting, no gloating, just efficiency. They knew their victory wasn't just in the destruction of Imperial ships, it was in sending a message. They needed to show the Empire that Earth wasn't to be trifled with, but they also needed to do it without tipping their hand too much. The Vanguard's capabilities were still largely unknown to the galaxy, and the humans intended to keep it that way for as long as possible. The remaining Imperial ship had already begun transmitting distress signals, desperate for reinforcements. The humans knew the message would reach Imperial command soon enough, but they had calculated for this. The Vanguard's technology was so far beyond anything the Empire had anticipated that the humans were confident they could outmaneuver any immediate response. But the humans weren't done yet. The Empire needed to understand the full extent of what they were dealing with, and that meant delivering one final blow before retreating. The Vanguard's crew prepared for their next strike, their movements calm and controlled. Every decision had been planned well in advance, and now they were executing it flawlessly. The Empire, meanwhile, was scrambling. On board the surviving ship, panic had set in. The Imperial commander barked orders, trying to regain some semblance of control. His ship's systems were still operational, but they were no match for the Vanguard. His mind raced, searching for a way out, a way to save his crew from the same fate that had befallen the others. But deep down, he knew it was futile. The humans had outclassed them in every possible way. The Vanguard moved in for its final strike, and this time, there would be no escape for the Imperial ship. The humans could have obliterated it, just as they had done with the others, but they chose a different path. Instead of destruction, they disabled the ship's engines and weapons, rendering it helpless. The message was clear: Earth wasn't just about annihilation, they could control the battlefield with precision. The Empire had never experienced anything like this. They were used to overwhelming their enemies, crushing them under the weight of superior numbers and firepower. But here was a human ship, smaller and seemingly less advanced, that had taken down an Imperial fleet with ease. It didn't make sense, and that was exactly what terrified the Empire most. The disabled Imperial ship floated in space, powerless and humiliated. The crew aboard the Vanguard knew this wasn't just a victory in battle, it was a victory in perception. The Empire's aura of invincibility had been shattered, and word of this defeat would spread quickly. Other species, long subjugated by the Empire, would hear about what had happened here today. And they would realize that the Empire could be beaten. With their mission complete, the Vanguard prepared to leave. The humans had no intention of lingering. They had delivered their message, and now it was time to retreat before the Empire could muster a larger response. The Vanguard's engines powered up, and in a flash, the ship disappeared into the depths of space, leaving the broken remains of the Imperial fleet behind. As the surviving Imperial crew began to assess the damage, one thing became painfully clear: the galaxy had changed. Earth, once mocked and dismissed, had proven that it was capable of far more than anyone had anticipated. The Empire would undoubtedly regroup, strategize, and plan their retaliation, but they now knew that they could no longer ignore humanity. Earth had become a force to be reckoned with. Back aboard the Vanguard, the crew remained focused. Their victory had been decisive, but they knew it was only the first step. The Empire would come for them, and when they did, they would come with everything they had. But the humans were ready. They had been preparing for this moment for years, and now, they had the technology and the resolve to face whatever the Empire threw at them. As the ships sped through the stars, the crews silently reflected on what they had accomplished. They had faced the might of the Galactic Empire and won. But this victory wasn't just for them, it was for all of humanity. The Empire's reign of terror would no longer go unchallenged. Earth had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same. There was still much to be done. The Vanguard's success was only the beginning of a larger campaign, one that would require careful planning and coordination. But for now, the humans could take solace in the fact that they had shown the Empire that Earth was no longer a joke. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and humanity stood at the forefront of that change. The Empire would come again, of that there was no doubt. But the next time, they would be facing a united, determined Earth. And this time, the humans wouldn't be the ones running. The destruction of the Imperial fleet sent shockwaves through the galaxy, and the news spread faster than anyone could have anticipated. At first, the reports were dismissed as exaggerations. There was no way a single human ship could have defeated 3 Imperial vessels. But as more details emerged, the truth became undeniable. The unthinkable had happened. Earth, a planet that had long been regarded as technologically backward and strategically irrelevant, had dealt a devastating blow to the Galactic Empire. Inside the Empire's vast command center, the reaction was one of utter disbelief. How could this have happened? The Empire had grown complacent in its dominance, assuming that no one would dare challenge their authority, let alone succeed. But now, for the first time in centuries, they had been bested, and by humans, no less. The leadership was in disarray, scrambling to make sense of the reports pouring in from the surviving Imperial ship. The Emperor, a figure who rarely involved himself in the daily operations of the fleet, had been briefed. His fury was palpable. How could his prized warships, each one a symbol of the Empire's power and control, have been defeated by a species they had long considered inferior? He demanded answers, but none of his advisors could provide any that made sense. The energy readings from the Vanguard defied conventional understanding, and the ship's speed and maneuverability were beyond anything the Empire had ever seen. They had no frame of reference for this kind of technology. As the High Command scrambled to devise a response, factions within the Empire began to form. Some argued for immediate retaliation, calling for the full might of the Imperial Armada to be unleashed on Earth in a show of overwhelming force. They believed that only through a decisive display of power could the Empire reassert its dominance and prevent further insurrections. Others, however, were more cautious. They feared that rushing into conflict with Earth without understanding the full extent of their capabilities could lead to even greater losses. The political tensions were palpable. Imperial officers who had previously dismissed Earth as insignificant now found themselves questioning everything they had known. What if this defeat was just the beginning? What if Earth wasn't an outlier, but a precursor to a larger uprising against the Empire's rule? Fear, for the first time in generations, gripped the Empire's leadership. Meanwhile, the humans had already begun to prepare for the inevitable retaliation. The Vanguard's victory had been a stunning success, but they knew that the Empire would not let such a blow go unanswered. Earth's leaders gathered in secret meetings, discussing the next steps. They had spent years in the shadows, developing technology that rivaled the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, and now that they had revealed their hand, there was no going back. The mood on Earth was one of cautious optimism. The Vanguard's success had unified humanity in a way that few had expected. Old rivalries between nations faded into the background as the realization set in. They were no longer just fighting for Earth's place in the galaxy, but for survival itself. The Empire's response, when it came, would be brutal, and humanity needed to be ready. Behind closed doors, the engineers and scientists who had designed the Vanguard were already working on the next generation of ships. They knew the Empire would adapt, and they needed to stay one step ahead. The technologies that had made the Vanguard so powerful were only the beginning. New weapons, faster ships, and more advanced defenses were being developed, all in anticipation of the war that was sure to come. But for now, the galaxy held its breath. The Empire, still reeling from its defeat, had yet to make its next move. There were rumors of unrest in the outer colonies, whispers of rebellion from species that had long been under the Empire's heel. The defeat at the hands of the humans had given them hope. If Earth could strike such a blow against the Empire, then maybe they could too. The seeds of resistance had been planted. On Earth, the mood was somber yet resolute. The Vanguard had returned, its crew hailed as heroes, but there was no celebration. The crew knew better than anyone that this was only a temporary reprieve. The Empire would come, and when they did, it would be with a force far greater than anything humanity had faced before. But the humans were ready. They had proven their strength, their ingenuity, and their resolve. They would not bow to the Empire, not now, not ever. As the days passed, the Empire's leadership remained in turmoil. Every attempt to explain the defeat of their fleet was met with more questions than answers. The energy readings from the Vanguard defied logic, and their scientists were unable to replicate, or even fully understand the technology that had been used. The Empire's greatest minds were baffled, and that only deepened the fear among the leadership. The Emperor himself grew increasingly paranoid. He knew that this defeat had changed the game. His empire, once unchallenged, was now vulnerable. He could sense the cracks forming, both within his own ranks and across the galaxy. He ordered his spies to gather more information on Earth's technology, to uncover the secrets behind the Vanguard's success, but the humans had covered their tracks well. Earth had become a mystery, one that the Empire could not afford to ignore. The galaxy, once dominated by the Empire's iron fist, now found itself in a state of uncertainty. Species that had long accepted the Empire's rule began to reconsider their place in the hierarchy. Could Earth be the key to their liberation? Could this once dismissed planet be the catalyst for a new era in the galaxy? Back on Earth, the Vanguard's crew watched the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, the Empire was plotting its revenge. But they were ready. Earth had stood tall against the greatest force in the galaxy, and they would do it again. The humans had sent their message, and the Empire had no choice but to listen. The galaxy would never be the same.